The space station Ardent Halo floated in perfect silence above a blue-green gas giant. Its shining rings glowed with a soft golden light, marking it as one of the most important peace stations in the galaxy. Here, hundreds of species came to trade, learn, and share ideas. It was a place of calm after centuries of fear between the stars. Inside the main concourse, banners of many colors hung from tall crystal columns. Aromas from alien foods drifted through the air. Creatures of all shapes and voices moved together like the currents of a living ocean. In that calm rhythm of peace, Ambassador Lyra Venn of Elisara walked with quiet grace. Lyra was known for her curiosity. She came from a gentle world where danger was rare and kindness was taught from birth. Her people, with their soft blue skin and silver eyes, were scholars and dreamers. Lyra had spent years studying the biology and history of other races. But nothing had prepared her for what she saw that day. A new arrival stepped off Dock 72. He was tall, taller than most species in the hall, and his movement carried a slow steadiness. His skin was a warm bronze shade, marked with faint lines like scars that caught the light. His hair was dark, and his eyes were deep and strange, like oceans that had seen storms but still reflected sunlight. He wore simple gray clothing with a small patch over the chest, a blue sphere with white lines across it. At first, no one noticed him, but when the station registry scanned his ID, a soft alarm tone echoed. The crowd stopped. The holodisplay flashed red letters. Origin World Earth, Class 12, Lethal Biosphere. For a heartbeat, silence filled the hall. Then soft murmurs spread. Did it say Class 12? Someone whispered. That can't be right. No one comes from a Class 12 world. They're myths, fairy tales. Lyra's heart skipped. She had read about Earth once in an old academic journal. Most scientists believed such planets were impossible homes for intelligent life. The index described Earth as a death world, a world full of storms, toxins, wild predators, unstable climates, and diseases that could wipe out entire species in days. It was a place where evolution fought a constant war just to survive. And yet here stood a being from that world, calm as morning. The newcomer looked around as if unaware of the fear building around him. He smiled politely, nodded to a nearby customs officer, and waited while they ran his clearance. His voice, when he finally spoke, was deep and even. Good afternoon. Commander Jacob Holt representing the Terran Union. I'm here for the Galactic Science Conference. The customs officer, a small creature with glassy scales, blinked nervously. Yes, Commander. Of course, welcome to Ardent Halo. His hands trembled as he handed the visitor a translator badge. Lyra watched closely. Something inside her, a mix of caution and fascination, pushed her forward. She had to know if the stories were true. She approached slowly, her diplomatic robes whispering against the polished floor. Excuse me, she said gently. You're from Earth? He turned to her, his expression open and kind. That's right. For a moment, her voice refused to form words. The translator in her ear confirmed the data again. Terran origin confirmed. Her throat felt dry. You're from that death world? She whispered. The corners of his mouth lifted in a simple smile. So they still call it that? Something about the smile disarmed her. It was not proud or cold. It was warm, like a teacher amused by an old myth. Still, the title Deathworld echoed in her thoughts. Lyra invited him to walk with her toward the visitors' lounge. The crowd slowly parted, some keeping their distance, others whispering in awe. Jacob seemed used to it. He glanced at the alien architecture around him, studying each species and their customs with quiet curiosity. The lounge overlooked the bright blue storms of the gas giant below. They sat by a wide window where the light shimmered like water. A service drone floated by with a tray of glowing drinks. Lyra chose a clear nectar from Elisara. Jacob chose plain water. You don't mind my question? She asked after a moment. Not at all, he said. I get it a lot. I've read about Earth, she continued, her voice a little shy. The records call it one of the most dangerous biospheres ever documented. How can anyone live there? Jacob rested his cup on the table and thought for a moment. It's challenging, I guess, but it's also home. We grew up with it. When everything around you wants to kill you, you learn to adapt. You learn fast. You build tools, plan ahead, and rely on each other. After a while, you stop thinking of it as danger. It's just life. Lyra studied him carefully. There was no boast in his tone, no pride. Only quiet truth. "Your people must be very strong," she said. He shook his head. "Not strong, really. Just stubborn. We fall, we get up, and we keep going. Maybe that's our talent." Outside the glass, lightning flashed across the gas giant's clouds. Lyra flinched at the brightness. Jacob only watched, his face calm. "You're not afraid of storms?" she asked. He smiled again. "I grew up where the sky could throw worse at you every summer. Tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes. You get used to respecting nature, not fearing it." Lyra felt a small chill. Her world, Elisara, had mild weather and gentle seas. Their homes were built in balance with the environment. Even small quakes caused months of recovery work. To imagine a world that faced such forces daily was beyond belief. Still, she saw something peaceful in him, a steady patience that came from surviving what others could not. As they talked, more delegates gathered nearby, pretending to enjoy their meals but clearly listening. The idea of a Deathworlder on the station stirred every kind of curiosity. Some whispered that his people must be violent hunters. Others claimed humans were impossible engineers who could turn poison into medicine. Jacob ignored the gossip. He asked Lyra questions about her world instead. What they valued, what they studied, what made them happy. His interest was genuine. He laughed softly when she described floating gardens of silver vines that sang in the wind. "That sounds beautiful," he said. "We had something similar once. We called them wind chimes." Lyra found herself smiling. "Your world sounds so dangerous, but you speak of it with warmth." He looked out at the stars. "Because danger taught us gratitude. Every day you survive, you find something to appreciate. A sunrise, a friend, a quiet cup of coffee. Maybe that's why we smile so much. We know how easily life can end, so we enjoy it while we can." His words lingered with her long after they fell silent. Later, as Lyra returned to her quarters, she replayed the meeting in her mind. The image of his calm face against the hum of the station light stayed with her. She opened her research tablet and searched again for Earth. The database filled with frightening statistics. Gravity 1.0 standard, atmosphere dense with oxygen, hundreds of active volcanoes, over 1,000 known diseases, predatory life forms, unstable climate zones. Yet one entry at the end caught her eye. Dominant species human, status survivor. She smiled faintly. "Survivor," she whispered. It was a simple word, but it carried a power she could not explain. Meanwhile, in his temporary quarters, Jacob unpacked a small bag. Inside was a faded photograph. 5 humans standing in front of a dusty vehicle, smiling despite the scratches on their faces. He placed it on the desk beside the translator device and leaned back, looking at the ceiling. He knew how the aliens saw his kind. Dangerous, unpredictable, maybe even reckless. But he also knew something they didn't. Humanity's greatest strength was not their toughness. It was their ability to connect, to reach out even in fear. When he had looked into Lyra's eyes and seen curiosity instead of disgust, he felt a spark of hope. Maybe the galaxy was finally ready to understand them. He whispered to the empty room, "Let's try not to scare them this time." Then he chuckled softly and turned off the lights. Far away, in the council chambers of the station, diplomats already discussed the arrival of the human representative. Some feared him. Others wanted to meet him. The word Deathworlder passed from one voice to another like a secret carried by wind. But Lyra Venn knew there was more behind that word. She had seen it herself in that gentle smile, strength wrapped in calm, survival balanced with kindness. She looked out at the stars through her window and whispered again, as if repeating a truth to the universe. "You're from that death world?" And somewhere on the station, Jacob Holt smiled. Morning came softly to the great space station ardent halo. Artificial sunlight glowed through the curved glass walls, touching the corridors with a warm gold hue. The endless rings of the gas giant below turned slowly, their blue clouds shifting like painted mist. Life continued, traders setting up stalls, ambassadors preparing speeches, scientists rushing between labs. Among them, Lyra Venn walked with quiet thought. Her mind still lingered on the human she had met the day before, Commander Jacob Holt, the man from the death world. She had not slept much. Her dreams were full of strange images. Storms that stretched across continents, vast forests filled with creatures with sharp eyes, and humans walking through danger as calmly as through sunlight. It was all impossible and yet somehow real. Today, she had been assigned to escort Commander Holt to the science conference. She wanted to know more about him, about Earth, about the way his kind lived through such a world. Part of her was nervous, but a stronger part was curious. Lyra arrived at the docking corridor. The human stood there already awake and prepared. His uniform was neat, though simple, and his expression was calm as always. "Good morning, Commander," she said politely. He smiled. "Morning, Ambassador. And please call me Jacob." His tone was friendly and warm. It made her shoulders relax. "Then you may call me Lyra," she said with a small nod. "Deal," he said, his smile widening. As they began walking toward the main atrium, Lyra noticed how the crowd still reacted to him. Some stared with curiosity, others stepped aside with caution. The word Deathworlder had already spread through the station. Everyone had heard the story of the human from Earth. Jacob didn't seem bothered. He moved with quiet confidence, greeting those who met his eyes with a polite nod. Lyra admired that about him. Most people would have looked away in discomfort, but he met every gaze with calm respect. Inside the conference hall, tall glass panels displayed moving stars. Scientists and engineers from over 50 species gathered to share knowledge. Holographic displays floated in the air, images of new starship engines, healing technology, and planetary ecosystems. Jacob listened attentively to every speaker. Sometimes Lyra caught him smiling in quiet amusement, as if remembering something from home. During a break, she finally asked, "You seem very calm. Does none of this surprise you?" He shook his head slightly. "It's impressive, sure. But it's not strange to me. Humans have been building things like this for centuries. Maybe not as advanced, but with the same spirit." Lyra tilted her head. "How do you mean?" He pointed toward a display showing a delicate hovering machine that collected atmospheric samples. "That device? It reminds me of early human explorers. We used to send small robots to other planets, Mars, Venus, even the moons of Jupiter. They didn't always survive. Sometimes the winds tore them apart, but every time one failed, we built a better one." His eyes glimmered slightly as he spoke. "We kept trying no matter what. That's what being human means. You don't stop because something's hard." Lyra nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She remembered how her own people avoided danger, preferring balance and safety. To them, risk was foolish. But to humans, it seemed risk was how they learned. Later that day, they shared lunch in the observation dome. It was quiet there, with only the soft hum of the station around them. Through the glass, the galaxy stretched endlessly, full of light and shadow. Jacob sipped from a metal flask. Lyra tasted a pale drink from her world, sweet and cooling. "Tell me more about Earth," she asked. "What is it really like?" He leaned back, thinking. "It's beautiful," he said softly, "but not easy. Every continent has its own dangers, storms, floods, heat, cold, earthquakes. You name it, we've faced it." Lyra's silver eyes widened. "And yet your people live there?" He laughed gently. "We don't just live there, we build cities, plant crops, and explore the stars. We argue a lot too," he added with a grin. "But that's part of the fun," Lyra smiled. "You make it sound so simple." Jacob looked out the window. "It's not simple, but it's worth it. When you wake up every day knowing nature could destroy you, you learn to appreciate every good thing you have. You learn teamwork, invention, courage. You learn to keep going even when you're scared." Lyra rested her chin on her hand, thinking deeply. "Maybe that's why your people explore so much. The stars must look peaceful compared to your home." He nodded. "Maybe. But we don't explore because we're running away. We explore because we want to see what's out there. Curiosity built our first rockets. Hope kept them flying." A quiet moment passed between them. The light from the gas giant reflected in Jacob's eyes, turning them the color of the sea. Lyra asked softly, "Were you ever afraid to leave your planet?" He paused before answering. "Of course. Every human is afraid of something. But we do things anyway. Fear isn't a stop sign. It's just a reminder that what you're doing matters." His words felt simple yet powerful. Lyra realized that she had never heard fear described like that before. On Elisara, fear was something to avoid. For him, it was something to overcome. After lunch, they visited the cultural exhibit hall. Each species had a display of their world, images, music, artifacts. Lyra's display showed soft gardens, singing vines, and calm rivers. The human section was smaller, but it caught attention immediately. There were pictures of Earth's mountains, deserts, deep oceans, and snow-covered lands. Some showed massive storms, lightning flashing across black skies. Others showed people smiling, working, playing instruments, or painting bright murals on broken walls. Lyra stopped in front of one image, a child holding a small flower growing through cracked concrete. "What does this mean?" she asked. Jacob smiled gently. "That's what we call hope. No matter how hard things get, something always finds a way to grow." She stared at the image for a long time. Something about it felt deeply human, fragile yet unbreakable. As they left the hall, Lyra noticed a few alien scholars whispering nearby. One of them, a tall being with crystal skin, said softly, "Deathworlders are reckless. They take risks for no reason." Another replied, "Perhaps, but their technology is remarkable." Jacob seemed to hear, but he didn't react. He only looked ahead. Lyra frowned at their rudeness. "Doesn't that bother you?" she asked. He shrugged lightly. "They're not wrong. We do take risks, but not for no reason. Every risk we take teaches us something new. Every failure helps us grow." Lyra admired the calm in his voice. There was no anger, no pride, just understanding. She realized he had probably faced far worse judgments before. As the day ended, the soft artificial dusk filled the station. The crowd thinned and quiet music floated through the corridors. Lyra and Jacob stood near a wide window again, watching the stars drift past. "I still can't believe your people survived on a death world," she said softly. Jacob smiled. "You'd be surprised what life can do when it refuses to give up." Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. "Your world made you strong. Maybe too strong for the rest of us," he chuckled. "Strength isn't just muscle or power. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes it's kindness. We learned that too." She turned to him, eyes gentle. "And what do you think of us? Of the galaxy?" He looked around at the peaceful station, the quiet order, the comfort built into every wall. "I think it's beautiful," he said, "but maybe a little fragile. You've all made something precious here. Maybe that's why I want to help protect it." His words warmed her heart. She hadn't expected such sincerity. Later, Lyra wrote in her journal, "Humans are not the monsters the archives describe. They are survivors, yes, but also dreamers. Their world taught them to fight, but it also taught them to hope. Commander Holt does not carry the spirit of death. He carries the legacy of life that refuses to end." She paused, reading her own words, then added, "When I looked at him today, I saw something rare, a quiet strength that does not need to prove itself. Maybe the galaxy has judged them too soon." She closed the journal with a small smile. Meanwhile, in his quarters, Jacob sent a message back to his ship orbiting nearby. "Met the Elysaran ambassador. Smart, kind, curious. Reminds me of old friends. People here seem nervous, but that's okay. We'll change that with time." He looked out the small window at the stars. The endless galaxy stretched before him. New worlds, new people, new possibilities. He smiled to himself. "We came from a death world," he murmured. "But maybe we can make this galaxy a little more alive." The stars shimmered like scattered fireflies, and the station turned slowly through their light. Somewhere, beyond the quiet hum of space, the legend of the Deathworlder had only just begun. The next morning, the space station ardent halo was calm and shining. The gas giant below rolled in blue clouds, glowing like liquid glass. Thousands of beings from many worlds moved along the curved walkways. Conversations filled the air. Soft music floated from a nearby cafe, and the smell of exotic food drifted through the vents. It was a perfect day, until the lights flickered. Lyra Venn had been reviewing her notes in her office when the first tremor came. It was small, like a passing vibration under the floor, but it made the table shake slightly. She frowned and looked toward the ceiling. A faint alarm light blinked once, then stopped. She tried to ignore it, but a moment later her communicator chimed. "Ambassador Venn," came a calm but serious voice. "Please report to engineering control. We may have a power irregularity." Her heart tightened. "Understood," she replied, grabbing her datapad. As she stepped into the corridor, the light panels above her dimmed for half a second. People around her looked up nervously. The hum of the engine sounded uneven, like a heartbeat missing a beat. She quickened her pace. In engineering control, a group of technicians worked quickly at glowing panels. The air smelled faintly of ozone. The head engineer, a tall insectoid named Tirka, turned to her. His antennae twitched with tension. "Ambassador," a meteor fragment hit the outer shielding. It's minor, but part of the reactor's stabilizer grid is damaged. Power levels are dropping faster than we expected. Lyra's eyes widened. Is it dangerous? Tirka hesitated. Not yet. But if we can't stabilize it soon, the station will lose artificial gravity and temperature control. Before Lyra could respond, the door opened. Commander Jacob Holt entered, wearing a tool belt and holding a compact scanner. His calm face and steady steps instantly drew attention. I heard there's a problem, he said simply. Tirka blinked in surprise. Commander, with respect, this is a technical matter. I'm an engineer, Jacob said with an easy tone. Let me help. Lyra saw the hesitation in Tirka's eyes. Many still saw Jacob as a mystery, maybe even a risk, but there was no time for fear. Let him assist, Lyra said firmly. Tirka gave a short nod. Fine. The reactor's stabilizer panel is flickering. The containment systems aren't responding. Jacob stepped closer, studying the data. His brow furrowed for only a second. The energy loops are overheating. You're running the wrong coolant ratio for this much stress. Reduce the fourth conduit's flow by 12%. Tirka blinked. That will overload the secondary vent. Jacob smiled faintly. Only for 5 seconds. Then it'll balance itself. Trust me. The alien engineer hesitated, then entered the adjustment. The station hummed louder. The lights flickered again and then steadied. A collective breath filled the room. Tirka's eyes widened. It worked. Jacob nodded. Good, but it's not fixed yet. That's just a patch. You've got microfractures in your vent shields. They'll melt if we don't seal them soon. Lyra watched him work with quiet amazement. He moved with purpose, scanning systems, adjusting dials, giving calm instructions as if he'd worked here for years. The others followed his lead without question. What do you need? She asked. Access to the maintenance shaft under the core, Jacob said. If the microfractures grow, they'll crack the plasma filters. Lyra hesitated. That area isn't safe. The radiation sensors are unstable. Jacob gave her that same small smile. Don't worry. I'll be careful. Something in his calm voice made her believe him, even though she knew the risk. She handed him her access badge. Be quick, Commander. The maintenance shaft was dimly lit, filled with pipes and cables that pulsed with blue light. Jacob moved through it on steady feet, his scanner showing readings that made no sense to most beings but were clear to him. He found the damaged section quickly, a crack glowing faintly along the plasma vent's casing. Heat shimmered in the air. The temperature was rising and soon the automatic cooling would fail. He set down his small kit and began to work, humming softly to himself. Up in control, Lyra watched the screens anxiously. One showed his body heat moving through the shaft. Another displayed the core's pressure levels. Tirka clicked his mandibles nervously. He shouldn't be down there. The temperature is too high. Lyra's hands tightened around her datapad. He knows what he's doing. The lights flickered again. The readings jumped sharply. Pressure rising, someone called out. Lyra leaned closer to the screen. Jacob, can you hear me? His voice came through the communicator, calm as ever. Yes, Ambassador. It's fine. I just need a few more minutes. A few minutes may be too long, Tirka warned. Jacob chuckled softly. Then we'll make them count. Down below, Jacob tightened the last seal and checked the readings. The plasma vent still glowed, but the leak had stopped. He leaned back, wiping sweat from his forehead. All right, that should do it. He looked around at the maze of cables and smiled faintly. Beautiful system. Reminds me of the old orbital stations back home. He tapped his communicator. Lyra, tell your engineer to reroute power through the secondary relays. The main stabilizer will reset automatically. Understood, she replied, her voice filled with relief. The room above buzzed with motion as technicians followed his instructions. Slowly, the warning lights turned green one by one. The hum of the station grew steady again. When Jacob climbed out of the maintenance shaft, Lyra was waiting. Her eyes were full of quiet wonder. You did it, she said softly. You saved the station. He smiled, brushing dust from his hands. Team effort. Tirka and his crew did great. The alien engineer looked embarrassed but nodded respectfully. You have our gratitude, Commander. Your instincts are unusual but effective, Jacob laughed. That's one way to put it. Later, the emergency was declared over. Life slowly returned to normal. But everywhere Jacob walked, people looked at him differently now, not with fear but with cautious respect. Word spread quickly. The Deathworlder had saved Ardent Halo. Lyra found herself thinking about the way he stayed calm when others panicked, how he seemed to treat danger like an old friend. When they met again that evening in the observation dome, the light of the gas giant reflected across their faces. Lyra turned to him with a curious smile. "How could you stay so calm during that?" she asked. He shrugged gently. "Where I'm from, you have to stay calm. If you panic, you make mistakes. On Earth, mistakes can cost you more than time." She looked at him carefully. "So you've faced things like this before?" He nodded slowly. "Many times. We've had storms that wiped out entire cities, machines that failed in orbit, and accidents far from help. You learn to think first, move second, and never give up." Lyra felt both admiration and sorrow. "Your world sounds so harsh." Jacob smiled softly. "It is. But it taught us something precious, that survival isn't about strength. It's about learning, adapting, helping one another. We don't live despite the danger. We live with it." A quiet silence settled between them. The stars outside shimmered like tiny fires. Lyra finally said, "When the power failed, I was afraid we would all be lost. But you acted as if you knew exactly what to do." He chuckled lightly. "When you come from a planet that tries to kill you every week, you get good at fixing things." Lyra laughed softly, covering her mouth. "You really don't fear anything, do you?" He turned his gaze toward the endless stars. "Oh, I do. But fear isn't something to hide from. It's just another part of being alive." That night, as Lyra returned to her quarters, she wrote again in her journal, "Commander Holt is unlike anyone I've ever met. When others freeze, he moves. When others doubt, he believes. Perhaps this is what makes humanity so remarkable. They were born on a death world, yet they carry life wherever they go." She paused and added, "He smiled while saving us. Not out of pride, but out of peace. Maybe that smile is what truly defines a Deathworlder." Meanwhile, Jacob sat alone in the quiet observation deck. The stars stretched out before him like an ocean of dreams. He reached into his pocket and touched the small photo of his home, his friends, and his old blue planet. "Still making it, Earth," he whispered. "Still doing our best." He smiled once more, the same calm, unbreakable smile that had carried his people through every storm. And somewhere on the station, people began to whisper, not in fear, but in awe, about the human who had come from a death world and saved them all with a steady hand and a quiet grin. The ardent halo had returned to calm after the power crisis. The station's great glass corridors once again glowed with gentle light, and the sound of laughter returned to the halls. Delegates from 100 worlds resumed their meetings, their fear replaced by quiet admiration for the human who had saved them. But deep within the reactor bay, something unseen was still wrong. The morning after, Commander Jacob Holt woke early, as he always did. He stretched, checked his wrist device for updates, and smiled faintly at the report. Reactor stable. Still, something in his instincts felt uneasy. He had lived long enough on Earth to trust his instincts, the quiet warnings that came from years of surviving the unexpected. He stood by the window of his small cabin, looking out at the endless gas giant below. Its clouds swirled like ocean waves, bright and calm, yet he knew that peace could hide danger, just like calm seas could hide storms. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The door opened, and Ambassador Lyra Venn stepped in, her silver eyes bright. "Good morning, Commander," she said. "Morning, Ambassador," he replied, smiling. "You're up early too," she nodded. "I wanted to thank you again for yesterday. Without you, we might have lost the whole station." Jacob waved it off lightly. "I just fixed what was broken. Your people did the hard work," Lyra smiled. "You always say that, but everyone knows who saved us." He looked out at the stars again. "I didn't do it alone. I never do anything alone. Humans work best together." She studied him for a moment. There was something about his calm confidence that still amazed her. Most beings she knew feared danger, but Jacob seemed to face it like an old friend. The new problem later that morning. Lyra joined Jacob and the engineers in the control room. They were running routine checks when the lights flickered again, just for a second. It was so small that most people ignored it, but Jacob didn't. He frowned, checking the data on his screen. "Tirka, what's the energy reading on the secondary cooling grid?" The insectoid engineer looked confused. "Normal. Wait, no. There's a small fluctuation. Only 0.02%, nothing serious." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "On Earth, a small fluctuation usually means a big one is coming." Lyra stepped closer. Do you think something's still wrong? Jacob nodded slowly. Yes, that meteor fragment didn't just damage the shields. It cracked one of your coolant pipes. The system's holding for now, but it's heating unevenly. Tirka blinked. We can monitor it. Jacob shook his head. By the time you see it on a monitor, it'll be too late. We need to repair it manually. Lyra hesitated. Manually? That's in the lower reactor zone. It's too hot down there. Jacob gave that same calm smile she'd come to recognize. Then I guess it's a good thing I like warm weather. Into the core, the lower reactor zone was rarely visited by anyone except maintenance drones. It was dim, full of glowing pipes, soft hissing vents, and the steady hum of energy flowing through the walls. Jacob walked ahead, his flashlight cutting through the faint mist. Lyra followed reluctantly, her translator earpiece buzzing faintly from the interference. Are you sure you want to be here? He asked without turning. I said I would help, she replied firmly. Besides, someone has to make sure you don't take all the credit again. He chuckled. Fair enough. They reached the lower access panel. The heat was stronger now, a dry wave that shimmered in the air. Jacob crouched beside the cracked pipe, examining it carefully. The metal was glowing faintly orange, a sure sign of stress. He tapped his scanner. Yep, just as I thought. Pressure's building. If it gets any higher, the reactor will shut itself down. Lyra frowned. Isn't that good? It will protect the station. Jacob shook his head. Not if it shuts down too fast. You'll lose life support, gravity, and half your systems before you can restart it. She bit her lip. So what do we do? He smiled gently. We fix it the human way, the human way. He opened his toolkit and began working. Lyra handed him tools when he asked, though she didn't fully understand what he was doing. He explained in simple words as he worked, his voice calm and easy. Back home, we learned to make do with what we have. We didn't always have fancy machines or perfect materials. Sometimes you just use tape, rope, and willpower. Lyra blinked. Tape? He grinned. You'd be surprised what a good roll of tape can do. Despite the heat, his movements were careful and steady. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, but he didn't slow down. Lyra watched, amazed at how he focused on every detail. You really don't give up easily, she said. He looked up at her and smiled. No one from Earth does. Our world doesn't let us. He replaced the cracked part with a spare pipe from his kit and sealed it with a heat-resistant compound. When the system hummed back to life, the readings on his scanner turned green. There, he said, standing up. That should hold, Lyra smiled. You make it look simple. He wiped his hands and laughed softly. Simple doesn't mean easy. The unexpected surges they turned to leave, the station trembled. The lights flickered twice and a deep sound filled the air, a low vibration that made the floor shake. Lyra gasped. What's happening? Jacob checked his scanner again. The stabilizers are fine. It's something else. Wait. His eyes widened slightly. A feedback surge. The backup systems kicked in too early. It's sending excess power back into the main grid. Lyra's voice trembled. Can you stop it? He looked at the readings and took a deep breath. Yes, but I'll need to reach the manual override. It's at the far end of the chamber. He nodded. I know. Lyra followed as he moved quickly along the narrow walkway. Steam hissed from the vents, the lights flashing red now. Jacob kept his focus, his voice steady as he spoke into his communicator. Giving instructions to the engineers above. Tirka. Cut power to conduits 7 through 9. Reroute everything through the auxiliary lines. Understood, the engineer replied. Lyra tried to stay calm. You're sure this will work? Jacob smiled without looking back. It'll work. It always does. Holding the line, they reached the override console. Jacob opened it and began entering commands. The lights flickered faster, then steadied again. Almost there, he said quietly. Lyra watched the numbers stabilize on the screen. The shaking stopped, replaced by the soft hum of the engines returning to normal. Then silence. It's done, Jacob said finally, stepping back. Station's safe. Lyra exhaled deeply, relief flooding her face. You did it again, he smiled faintly. We did it. After the calm, when they returned to the main deck, the crew greeted them with quiet applause. The news had already spread. Commander Holt had stopped another system failure. Tirka approached, his antennae tilted respectfully. Commander, you have saved us twice now. I owe you more than thanks, Jacob shook his head. You don't owe me anything. Just promise me one thing, keep learning. Every problem teaches you something new. Tirka nodded, clearly touched. I will. Lyra looked around at the smiling faces. For the first time, no one seemed afraid of the human. Instead, they looked at him with admiration and maybe even a little awe. Reflections. That evening, Lyra and Jacob returned to the observation dome. The gas giant below shimmered in calm blues and golds. Lyra broke the silence first. You risked your life again today. Jacob chuckled softly. I've done that since I was a kid. It's a habit. You make it sound easy, she said. He shook his head. It's never easy, but when you've lived through so many storms, you stop fearing the next one. You just focus on what you can do. Lyra smiled gently. Your people must be very proud of you. He looked at her, his eyes soft. We don't do it for pride. We do it because someone has to. She nodded, understanding more now. That's the Deathworlders' way, isn't it? He grinned. That's one name for it. The smile that spreads. The next day, Jacob walked through the halls of the station. Where once people had whispered in fear, now they smiled as he passed. A child from a gentle world ran up to him, holding a small star-shaped flower. For you, the child said shyly. Jacob knelt down, accepting it with a warm smile. Thank you. It's beautiful. Lyra, watching from a distance, felt her chest tighten. The man from the Deathworld had become a symbol, not of danger, but of hope. And when she heard another delegate whisper, He's from that Deathworld, she smiled softly and whispered back, Yes. And thank the stars that he is. That night, as the station drifted quietly around the gas giant, Jacob stood by the window once more. He looked at the stars, thinking of Earth, its chaos, its beauty, its endless will to survive, he whispered softly. Still here, still smiling. And somewhere far below, on a world that once taught him to face every storm, the winds of Earth howled gently as if smiling back. The space station ardent halo floated quietly above the glowing gas giant. Its silver rings turned slowly in the dark sea of stars, a symbol of peace among hundreds of worlds. Life had returned to normal, yet something was forever changed. The word had spread far beyond the station. Delegates carried stories of the human named Commander Jacob Holt, the man from the Deathworld who had saved them not once, but twice. He had become more than a visitor. He was now a legend. The new respect in the main atrium, people moved through the crowd with a new kind of energy. Where they once whispered in fear, now they whispered with admiration. The word Deathworlder no longer carried terror. It carried respect. Small groups gathered around holograms showing Earth, green forests, blue oceans, vast deserts, and wild storms that filled the sky. Children from gentle planets watched with wide eyes as they learned that humans had lived and thrived there. Lyra Venn walked through the busy corridor, listening to the quiet conversations. Did you hear what he said to the engineers? One delegate whispered. That we should keep learning, another replied. Simple words, but powerful. Lyra smiled softly. She knew exactly what they meant. Since the crisis, she had worked closely with Jacob every day. He never acted like a hero. He only fixed problems, helped others, and spoke with kindness. His calmness had become a comfort to everyone. She had learned that his greatest strength wasn't his bravery or skill. It was his patience. The council invitation one morning. A message arrived for Lyra. It was from the Galactic Council, the ruling body of many worlds. They requested a formal report about the human and his role in the Ardent Halo incident. Lyra read the message twice, then looked across her office at Jacob, who was repairing a communication unit. The council wants to see you, she said. He looked up, slightly amused. That sounds serious. It is, she replied. They want to understand how a Deathworlder managed to save an entire station. He chuckled lightly. Guess I'll have to tell them I just got lucky. Lyra smiled. I think you'll need a better answer than that. The council chamber. The council chamber was a vast circular hall made of crystal and light. Representatives from over 60 species sat in quiet rows. When Jacob entered beside Lyra, all eyes turned toward him. He felt their stares but didn't look away. Instead, he offered a small, polite smile, the same calm smile that had become his trademark. The council chair, a tall being of soft golden light, spoke first. Commander Holt of Earth, we welcome you. We have heard of your actions aboard this station. Is it true you entered the reactor core without a containment suit? Jacob hesitated only a moment before answering. Yes, it was the fastest way to stop the overheating. There wasn't time to wait for equipment. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some sounded impressed, others disbelieving. The chair continued. You risked your life for people you did not know. Why? Jacob looked around the room, his voice steady. Because they needed help. On my world, we don't stop to think about who deserves saving. We just help. That's what humans do. A quiet silence filled the chamber. He continued. We come from a hard world. Everything there tries to stop you. The storms, the heat, the cold. But those same challenges taught us something. They taught us to care. Because when everything around you is dangerous, kindness becomes your strongest tool. Lyra watched him, her heart swelling with pride. He wasn't giving a speech. He was just speaking the truth. The chair leaned forward. Do all humans think like you? Jacob smiled faintly. I hope so. We may argue, make mistakes, and fall short, but we keep trying. That's who we are. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, the members of the council began to nod. The decision, after the meeting, Lyra and Jacob waited outside in the bright corridor. The gas giant's reflection shimmered through the glass walls. You did well, Lyra said softly. He shrugged. I just told them the truth. A soft chime announced the council's decision. The message appeared on the screen. The Galactic Council formally recognizes the Terran Union as an ally and invites humanity to join the Interstellar Accord. Lyra turned to him, eyes wide. They accepted you. Jacob smiled, but this time there was more warmth in it and a quiet joy. Looks like we're not alone anymore. The farewell gathering that evening, a celebration filled the main hall. Lights sparkled like stars and gentle music from a dozen worlds blended into a soft melody. Delegates from many species gathered, exchanging stories and laughter. At the center stood Jacob, wearing his simple gray uniform, surrounded by engineers, scholars, and diplomats. Even the children wanted to talk to him. Lyra approached, holding 2 glasses of glowing blue drink. You've become very popular, she teased. He laughed softly. I still don't understand why. I just did what anyone would do. Not anyone, she said, smiling. Only someone from Earth. He accepted the drink and raised it slightly. To new friends. To new beginnings, she replied. They clinked glasses gently. The gift later that night. When the celebration ended, Lyra found Jacob standing by the observation window, staring at the stars again. She walked up beside him, holding a small silver box. What's this? He asked. A gift, she said. From the station crew. He opened it carefully. Inside was a small crystal pendant shaped like the ardent halo itself, a circle with tiny stars carved around it. Lyra explained, It's a symbol of peace. You helped us keep it alive. Jacob held the pendant for a moment, then placed it carefully around his neck. Thank you. I'll wear it with pride, she smiled. You've earned it. They stood in silence, watching the stars drift past. The moment was quiet, but full of meaning. The message home. Before leaving the station, Jacob recorded a message to send back to Earth. His face appeared on the screen, calm and thoughtful. To the people of Earth. I'm sending this from the Ardent Halo Station, orbiting a gas giant far from home. They called our planet a Deathworld, but they were wrong. Earth isn't the world of death. It's the world of life that refuses to end. And now the galaxy knows that too. He smiled softly before ending the message. Lyra's report days later, Lyra submitted her final report to the Galactic Archives. Her words were simple but powerful. Humans come from a world that tests them every day. They are shaped by storms, heat, and struggle. But these hardships have not made them cruel. They have made them kind. Commander Jacob Holt showed us that true strength is not control or power. It is compassion under pressure. He taught us that a Deathworlder's greatest weapon is not their body, but their heart. She paused, then added one last line. When I first met him, I whispered, "You're from that Deathworld?" And he just smiled. Now I understand why. The legacy months passed and the story of the human spread across the stars. On distant worlds, schools taught children about Earth's courage. Pilots carried small symbols of the ardent halo on their uniforms. And when someone faced a challenge too hard to bear, they would say, Wayne, do it the Deathworlder's way and keep going. Jacob Holt continued to travel among the stars. visiting new worlds, helping where he could. Wherever he went, his smile seemed to carry hope. Lyra sometimes received messages from him, short, simple notes, still fixing things. Your starflowers are growing well. Tell the kids to keep learning. Every message made her smile. The final scene years later. Lyra returned to Ardent Halo as the new director of cultural exchange. The station had grown larger, brighter and more alive than ever. She stood by the same window where she had once met the man from the Deathworld. Outside, the stars still shimmered. She touched the small pendant Jacob had left behind, the same one shaped like the station's ring. A young student approached her. "Director Venn," the student asked shyly, "is it true that a human once saved this station?" Lyra smiled gently. "Yes, he did, and he taught us something we should never forget." "What's that?" the student asked. She looked out at the stars. "That strength doesn't come from an easy world. It comes from a heart that never stops hoping." The child nodded thoughtfully, eyes bright. As Lyra turned to leave, she whispered softly to herself. The words that had started it all, "You're from that death world?" And in her memory, she saw that calm, warm smile again, the smile that had changed the galaxy.